So initially I was going to make a video trying to predict the most improved player, but I actually don't care about that. That award doesn't quite mean what it used to, and that's also not the type of video I want to make today. I want to talk about players that next step can maybe really change the outlook of their teams. And as we go along, I'll talk about players that I believe can win most improved, but I don't want to limit myself to that. For what it's worth, who I believe is going to win most improved is Andrew Nembhard. Obviously, no Tyrese Halliburton. He only averaged 10 points per game last year. So if he goes from 10 points to 17 points, I think he's going to be the most obvious candidate, which to me is just not very interesting, right? Maybe his teammate wins it. Maybe Benedict Mathurin has a crazy breakout year. That would be more interesting, but I think Nembhard's going to win it, just because the counting stats are going to go up a lot. And that's not the type of video I want to make, or type of player I want to talk about, or type of situation I want to talk about, right? Because I like Nembhard. But similar to him, I'll start with someone that I believe can win most improved player this year, and that is Davon Mitchell. Now, maybe I believed in the shooting too much and it's still on very low volume. He still doesn't get to the line at all. But the last 2 years, he's shooting 38% from three. I think Davon Mitchell might have a Kyle Lowry type of trajectory. Kyle Lowry was 26 years old when he got to Toronto. Davon Mitchell is 26 years old right now. I would have to assume he's going to be the starting point guard on day one. We don't know what's going on with Terry Rozier, but Davon Mitchell only played 30 games with Miami. In those 30 games, he put up 10 points per game, 5 assists per game, but shot 50% from the field and 44% from three, only 3 attempts per game. But I feel like we've seen him play with a level of freedom and confidence that we haven't really seen in his career, and it's because Miami needs what he does. Miami doesn't really have anybody else off the dribble besides Tyler Hero that can go make something happen. So I think he's going to be empowered and continue to let it fly from three. He doesn't have to be ultra efficient, right? He doesn't have to shoot 44% from three. But if he's shooting 36, 37, even 35, but he's a threat from out there, it's going to open up the game for him and for everyone else. I think he's going to have a really big year. Just looking at the rest of this team, they need him to have a big year. And when you look at it, it's not like you're not expecting a jump from Bam. You're not expecting a jump from Tyler Hero. Maybe you are from Khalil Ware. But the chance that Davon Mitchell becomes like a very good starting point guard could do a lot for this team. If Davon Mitchell becomes Kyle Lowry, it changes the outlook of this team. And I don't want to disrespect Kyle Lowry by just thinking that's an easy thing to do, but I really see it. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I really believe in the pull-up three-point shooting with him. Last year in total, Toronto and Miami combined, he averaged 8 points and 5 assists. I think there's a real chance he averages 12, 13 points, 6 assists, and that's a pretty big jump. And another reason why I might pick him for most improved if I was a betting man is because Tyler Hero is probably gonna miss some time. Last year was the first really healthy year of his career. He's probably gonna miss 20 to 25 games next year. Hopefully not, but if he does, those shots are clearly going to go to Davon Mitchell, which is why I would feel even more comfortable putting a bet on him to win most improved player. Now to a player that probably has a less than 1% chance of winning most improved player, but his development is one of the biggest stories in the NBA, and I'm talking about Jaden McDaniels. Now, if you've been around here, you know it's been a roller coaster with him. I was extremely high on him early in his career. I've been majority out lately. Even though last year was kind of a breakout year, that's a little bit too strong, but last year was a career year, let's put it that way. I'm still a lot lower on his ceiling than I was a couple years ago, but maybe I'm wrong, right? Now, if Jaden McDaniels never gets better at basketball, if he remains this player the rest of his career, that's gonna be one hell of a career, right? But the idea around Minnesota was building around Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, right? That was their young core. I remember early last year, I was astonished. I was shocked by the stat that Jaden McDaniels had never had a double-double before this year. And then this year he goes out and he gets 10 double-doubles. The rebounding was the biggest stride he made in his game, and that's a big deal. But when you look at it, a lot of his game is still very stagnant. He's still not shooting the ball well from three. He still doesn't get to the free throw line at all. He's still not a good passer. So again, the player he is today is a very good player. I just wonder how much better he can actually get. And I want to be fair to Jaden McDaniels and point out how so far in his career he's been a playoff riser. Playoffs come around, all of a sudden he's a knockdown shooter. I do believe that Lakers series was a little bit of fool's gold with him abusing Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves. Not much resistance there, and that was the best series he had probably in his career so far in terms of offensively. And I want it to be clear, it's not me saying Jaden McDaniels isn't good. It's me saying he's so good that he might be the only way for you to go get that real number 2 option to a team that might value him as that potential 4th option, that just elite 3-and-D wing, which is maybe what he's suited best for. But in this situation in Minnesota, if you look at how they're going forward, they're going to be asking more of him than that. And I just don't know how much more he can actually give you. And also, I think it's so weird that he doesn't play a lot. When you look at other elite defensive wings, that's kind of something you can rely upon, right? They're going to play 40 minutes, extremely intense. That's not Jaden McDaniels. This year was a career high in minutes for him, and it was only 31 minutes per game. And you know what? Let's round up to 32 and be fair, because it's 31.9. But is that not kind of odd? Now, I know he deals with a bunch of foul trouble, even though this year was his lowest foul rate in his career. But he profiles as that type of player that you just can't keep off the court, yet he's not on the court a lot. I don't know, maybe I'm harping on that too much, but my elite attack dog defender, I feel like would be someone I keep on the court as much as possible, yet he only plays 32 minutes per game. I don't know, that's not important, but it does add to the value discussion. And I've seen people this summer saying they wouldn't trade Jaden McDaniels straight up for Darius Garland. And I'm not gonna act like I don't understand why you'd say that, but I feel like if you're saying that, you're still expecting him to hit another level. And I'm becoming more and more cautious of that happening, even though there were many strides last year, especially just attacking off the catch. But if he's gonna continue to be a low volume 3-point shooter, not a very efficient 3-point shooter, a decent rebounder now, career year rebounding, but not an elite rebounder, a bad passer, doesn't get to the line at all. There's a lot of flaws there, and is the defense worth it? Yes. But the idea that he's gonna be, he's one of the guys we're building around, I feel like it's still up for debate. And as of right now, depending on what happens with Rob Dillingham, if you're looking at this roster, it's set up for Jaden McDaniels to be the second best player on this team whenever Randall leaves. And I don't think we've seen enough from Jaden McDaniels to think that's a viable option at all. And he might be the guy you have to move to go get that second option, like a Darius Garland. I just think it's so important for him to show he can do more offensively. And when you compare him to other wings in the NBA, for whatever reason, there's a different discussion. Like, we're expecting him to be this all-star, and I'm not sure that's fair to him, but you look at someone like Aaron Nesmith, who puts up very similar numbers. No one's expecting an all-star leap from him. You look at someone like Herb Jones. Like, these are all very, very good role players, very good defenders, right, who have their place on a championship team. But for Minnesota, their version of that guy is poised to be their second best player, and I think they might have to pivot from that idea if he doesn't show he could do more offensively than he's shown so far in his career. Even someone like OG Anunoby, who I would say is better than Jaden McDaniels, is the 4th option on his team. And I think that is the more realistic outcome for Jaden McDaniels. He's the 4th best offensive player on your team. And if you come to that conclusion, all of a sudden trading him for someone like Darius Garland doesn't seem like such a terrible thing to do. But I want to see them test it. I want to see them push him to be more offensively. I was kind of hoping Randall would be gone so he could occupy some of that space on the court. I didn't want them to go get Kevin Durant because I want to see what Jaden McDaniels can do. And I feel like they need to see it as well. Because if this is all he's going to be, again, great player, very valuable player, but we need to go get someone else that can help Anthony Edwards more offensively. So I want to see what happens there. Let me know if I'm being too harsh on McDaniels in the comments. Another player that I will briefly talk about, because I feel like I've talked about him a lot recently, but Shaden Sharp, it's kind of obvious he's up for an extension at the end of this year. He's shown a lot of flashes, hasn't really been a consistent scorer in the NBA. And if you look at the shooting guard position, it's kind of a dying position, one, but you have to be like elite of the elite at scoring to not really excel at anything else. Now, I do believe Shaden Sharp obviously has the tools to become a very, very good defender, but right now I feel like we can say he's not that. And he's not this elite scorer. He's not a good passer. He's not a very good rebounder. And to really justify all that, you kind of got to be elite at scoring. Think about the shooting guards in the NBA right now. Which ones are just scorers? It doesn't really exist. Maybe Anthony Edwards. And I think Anthony Edwards, like, obviously he can't do it on a night-to-night basis, but when he's locked in, is one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. So initially, when I thought of Shaden Sharp, I was really thinking of it from the perspective of, can you develop into a real go-to scorer? And that's still what I'm thinking about. But if you can't do that, can you show you can do enough of the other things on the court well enough to keep you on the court? Because if all you're going to give us is an inefficient 20 points per game, we can kind of live without that. We can kind of put more size on the court. We could put more shooting on the court. We could put more playmaking, more defending on the court, right? So either be an elite scorer or prove yourself to have more value in other areas of the court, because it might come down to, are we closing with Shaden Sharp for that inefficient scoring, or are we closing with Toumani Camara all defensive? You know, so big year for Shaden Sharp. Again, I've talked about him a lot recently, so we'll keep it pushing on that. And now I'm kind of debating on what direction I want to go in here, because I have players like I'm fascinated by what they're going to do next year, but I'm not really expecting like a leap. I'm more fascinated by what their role is going to be. Like, I'm very intrigued by what is Jabari Smith Jr. season going to look like next year. Like, you got Kevin Durant, you got Şengün, you got Steven Adams, you got Clint Capella, right? But we'll save that for another day. And let's talk about Brandon Podziemski, a player I really believe in, but maybe a player that is best suited to be playing off of other great players. Now, luckily for him, they have Steph Curry and they have Jimmy Butler, but they need a little bit more on-ball creation. And can he take a step forward in that way? Because it seems like whenever the Warriors try to scale up his role in the offense, he kind of struggles doing that. Again, he's more suited to play off of Steph Curry, off of Jimmy Butler, and I think he'll have a huge role doing that. But those guys are going to miss some games, and can he do enough on ball to the point where they don't need another creator, which is kind of why I feel like they need Kuminga, and that's a whole different discussion. But I'll leave the pods discussion for there, or for later, I'll say. But I want to bring up Quentin Post, because I don't think people realize what he did last year and how crazy it actually was. He immediately was the best shooting five in the NBA. Besides Cat, right? Besides Cat, of course. But the way he was shooting the ball, the quick trigger he had, the volume of threes, there's really no other big that's doing that. Even Cat doesn't do it at that volume. And was that a real thing? In just 16 minutes per game, he took 4 threes per game, shot it at nearly 41%. Now, I don't think he's going to shoot 41%. But if he can shoot 37, 38% on the same volume, that is an extremely crazy weapon to have that opens up the court for the rest of your guys. And if they have that and Al Horford, that allows, you know, guys that aren't really great off the dribble to have more space. That allows for a Pods or a Moody to be better creating their own, because the center has to guard Quentin Post from 30 feet. Like, it was that crazy. And if it was real and you have Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, and Quentin Post all shooting with that level of volume, that's just a lot to deal with. And again, would make for a great situation for Kuminga. We'll see what happens there. But I think Quentin Post is like underrated. And if that was real, this Warriors team might be better than we're thinking, because it's just not normal to do what he did. And that level of spacing provides so much flexibility. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to see if Quentin Post can replicate what he did last year and maybe even better. And I'm not sure he quite fits the idea of this video as far as like taking a leap, but maybe he does. Maybe he's a starting level center in the NBA and gonna be a top 3 shooting center in the NBA. That would be a huge development for the Warriors. And speaking of shooting, I'll make this the last one. I have a lot more people I want to talk about, but save that for later. The Atlanta Hawks, right? We all look at this team, feel like they have a top 4 roster in the East. They should be a top 4 seed, but we can all see they lack a little bit of 3-point shooting. And that brings me to Shea, who I feel like had a bit of a underrated year, but he shot the ball pretty well, right? Not great, but average shooting year. But 97% of his threes were assisted. And that's fine, right? That's a great skill to have, catch and shoot. But I think this team needs a little bit more dynamic scoring. And my question is, can he do more off the dribble as a shooter? Because they don't really have that. They do have Luke Kennard. They do have that. They have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Not guys you want to go get their own bucket. And I don't think you want Shea either. But you do want him to have that ability to, one dribble, two dribble, pull up three. Can he have that in his arsenal at all? Because I think that would take this team a lot further. Because looking at this team, I think we all can see there's going to be moments where the offense completely stalls out, especially when Trae Young is not on the court. And can he make some of those bailout shots? I'm a big fan of his. I didn't expect him to have the season he had. I thought he would struggle more. I didn't believe he would be this all-star level player. I thought maybe, borderline all-star. I didn't believe in any superstar potential. And maybe I'm wrong in that. Hopefully I'm wrong in that. But my draft comparison for him was Chandler Parsons. And that doesn't sound great because we never actually got to see Chandler Parsons reach his prime. But that third year in Houston, that first year in Dallas, very, very good player. And if Shea can hit that level of a player, I know it's crazy to ask that in year two, but if he can, I feel like this Atlanta team can be very, very dangerous. If not, they're lacking a little bit of shooting, they're lacking a little bit of creation, a little bit of self-creation. So I like this team, but that's what worries me the most. And if Shea can take a step in that direction, we might be looking at a contender. So I got a little bit off track. There's a lot more players I want to talk about, but we'll leave it there for now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know if I'm being fair, or if I'm being harsh. All that in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. It will mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.